Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on control. This is a video that I've been requested to cover or to do by a number of people for years now. Most of the time I send them to my video failing to agree because I feel like that is the solution to the problem, and I haven't gone beyond that since. Today I'm going to go a little bit further and actually explain why I think it happens, and hopefully it helps people understand their ex and how to deal with the problem, and hopefully it gives people a different perspective with regards to control. But ultimately, if you want to solve this problem, you're going to have to look at the video failing to agree and maybe a little bit the video communication. For the most part, people who are controlling use myriad control mechanisms. And what I mean by that is there's not just like one way that they can do this. They do it through emotional blackmail, by guilting you. They do it through physical violence. They do it through threats. This is something that can happen any number of ways. And just like they use force to control other people, they themselves typically only respond to force when it comes to getting them to do something. And the video failing to agree deals with that problem by proposing the use of legal force. And so with that being said, I guess we can get into it a little bit. The first thing that I want to say is control isn't in and of itself a bad thing. Oftentimes you'll see it everywhere. Sometimes people try to control their own lives in positive ways, like they could just drift aimlessly, or they could go to school and get good grades, or go to college and get a degree in some field. There's also control that comes from the government, and that's, I mean, people don't like it, but some people won't do the right thing unless they're forced to do so. And they've passed all these statutes about not driving drunk and not killing people and not smoking or letting children smoke, stuff like that. And I mean, while we would love to say that if you took those laws away, everyone would still do the right thing out of the goodness of their own hearts, many of us know they won't. Many of us actually sanction the use of force on other people. And many of us actually appreciate the fact that the government does that. And when it comes to civil complaints between people, all the time people are using force against their neighbor. Somebody hits their car, they don't want to pay, you take them to court, you sue them, now they're paying you, not because they want to, but because you're forcing them. So what it really comes down to is control and the use of force is one of those things that you just kind of have to use based on whether or not you're doing the right thing. You know, in my particular case, I had to forcefully have my ex's parental rights terminated. She didn't agree to me getting primary physical custody. She didn't agree to me getting sole legal custody. She didn't agree to having her visitation suspended. But if I didn't do any of those things and I just let her do whatever she wanted, she would have ended up ruining our child. And the only way that I could deal with that problem was by trying to control the situation. It was by trying to use force to create an outcome that she didn't want to happen. So the use of force and the use of control isn't in and of itself evil or wrong. It's just one of those realities of life. I do feel like more people will respond to pain, not necessarily physical pain, but it could be suffering in some way that isn't actually felt physically. It could be mental anguish because of something that maybe they got fired at work or something. People learn more through pain, and people learn more through force than I think a lot of people here would want to really believe. The only other way to learn is through wisdom, and that's the less common way people learn. Most people, I mean, look at my case. I didn't learn about the law because I wanted to help all of these other people in the world deal with the legal system and get custody of their kids. I was forced through it. I ended up having to deal with an ex who was toxic, and the only way that I could deal with the problem was by using the legal system. Why did I represent myself? Because I chose to? Was there wisdom in me representing myself? Not really. I just didn't have any money. So once again, I was forced to represent myself. And I learned when I was litigating most of the time through pain, not wisdom. Motion denied, hearing bad outcome. And over and over again, all these bad outcomes taught me through pain that what I was doing wasn't going to work. I'm not going to necessarily say that what I was doing was wrong, because a lot of times a system is wrong and it just won't respond correctly. But I will say that I learned how to work around the legal system's dysfunction because of all the pain I felt from trying to do it these other ways that didn't work. So now we can actually get to what I've been wanting to talk about, which is where does this toxic control come from? I think it comes from people who are afraid to change their perception of reality. And what they're doing is, especially if they're personality disordered or if they have severe emotional immaturity issues. But there's all kinds of other people that do it too, so it's not even just that. It's a very common thing. Even people who are mentally, they don't have abnormal psychology issues, they still do this. There's a lot of people who do this. They have this kind of bubble that they put themselves in, this like fake perspective of reality. And they're in the middle of this bubble and they don't want to change it. They don't want to change the way that they perceive the world. They don't want to change the way that the world perceives them. And they will do things that are hurtful, not only to other people, but to themselves too, because they kind of hamstring themselves. They make it so they themselves really can't grow and evolve and progress. But aside from what happens to them, besides the negative way that this will impact their life, they most of the time will obsessively try to control all of the people connected to them, because they need to do that to make it so that they themselves don't have to change their perspective of reality, and also in a way they themselves just don't have to change. What it comes down to, I think, is people who do not want to change. They want everything to stay the way it is now, and anyone who is not going to comply with that wish will be hurt. And they lash out at people and they inflict pain on people, and many times they're sadistic about it, because to them it's like they need to teach you a lesson. I've called it the training program before. I don't know if I've referred to it in any of my videos. I know I brought it up in live streams, but it's like, it's not really just control for the sake of control. It's almost like they're trying to train you like a pet dog. And all of these people that are connected to them, especially the ones that are really, really close. So we're talking children. Sometimes it's siblings and parents, but usually it's children, because they're easier to indoctrinate from early on. Oftentimes it's their boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, spouse, whatever label you want to use. I guess the point I am trying to make here is control is a manifestation of something that goes much deeper, something much deeper that is wrong with your high conflict ex. And all you can see is this effort to control you, and your probable initial instinct is to lash out or defend yourself or refuse to be controlled. But all it kind of does is just distract you from a much bigger problem, because you can try and tell your ex you don't want to be controlled all you want, but they can't help themselves. And the reason why is what I just explained earlier. They do not want to change, and part of them not changing is controlling you and everyone else very close to them. You're there to fulfill a role. You're there to satisfy a need, and that need is for everything to remain the same for that person, period, at all costs. You will comply with that need, or they will do things to you to mess you up. So I hope that this helps people understand where I think it comes from, because what it's going to do is just send you right back to the beginning of this video, which is, how do you deal with the problem? If you can't reason with this person because they don't want to change, then how do you deal with the problem? Well, the answer to that is you force them to change. They're not going to want to. They have created a life where the entire day-to-day goal that they have is to keep things the same. And so they're not going to respond to any kind of voluntary effort to get any of that to change. They're only going to respond to force. It's going to take the order of the court. It's going to take the imposition of fines. With some of them, it's going to take a bailiff physically grabbing them with two hands and shoving them in a jail cell. That's what it takes for the most extreme ones. They don't respond to anything but force. And so you end up going right back to the beginning of the video, and hopefully now more people understand why I really didn't, do a video on this topic, because it just comes down to failing to agree. They're not going to agree, and so you're going to have to file something to make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, then there's nothing you can do about it, because it's to the point where it's ingrained almost in their subconscious that everything needs to stay the same, and there is almost nothing that they are not willing to do to keep things the same. And that includes neglecting their children, abusing their children, abusing you. By the way, you guys can attach this to not just high conflict exes. You can probably attach this to toxic parents, toxic siblings, toxic bosses, toxic coworkers. These are all, I feel like this is the kernel of the problem with people who are controlling in a toxic way. And again, remember towards the middle of the video, I talked about how control is used all the time to do all kinds of things, and it's not all necessarily bad. So, I mean, I think this is going to be a video that will help people understand sort of what's going on when they're dealing with these toxic people. And now that you can understand it, be prepared to deal with it the way that I don't think many of you want. I don't think many people who are dealing with a controlling ex want to control them back. But when it comes to protecting your children or preserving your rights, that's just what you're going to have to do, because that's the only thing that they respond to. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to post it down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.